a small West African nation, a young soldier who became president, and a standoff with some of the most powerful financial institutions in the world. This is the story of how Ibrahim Traoré copyright the leader of Burkina Faso tried to turn the tables on French banks, and in doing so, challenged decades of colonial legacy, economic dependency, and financial domination. Background visuals: dusty streets of Ouagadougou, French bank logos fading, gold mines glimmering. Narrator: but was this really a revolution, a broken bar, or just a symbolic fight? Today, we dive deep into the truth, the myths, and the power struggle behind the headlines. Part 1. Who is Ibrahim Traoré? Copyright 045 6 o'clock. Narrator: to understand the showdown, we need to know the man at the center of it all. Ibrahim Traoré copyright, born in 1988, a military captain by rank, and suddenly the face of Burkina Faso's political transformation after a 2022 coup. At just 34 years old, he became the world's youngest leader. Traoré copyright's rise was not smooth. Burkina Faso had been in turmoil for years, facing jihadist violence, political instability, and economic decline. The country's ties with France, its former colonial ruler, were already fragile. French troops had been deployed in the Sahel to fight terrorism, but their presence was controversial, and many locals accused France of exploiting resources while leaving security problems unsolved. Narrator: when Traoré copyright seized power, he promised change. He positioned himself as anti-imperialist, portraying himself as the voice of African sovereignty. In fiery speeches, he denounced Western interference and vowed to restore control of Burkina Faso's resources to its people. Visuals: montage of Traoré copyright addressing crowds, waving Burkina Faso copyright flag, youth cheering. Part 2. The financial web, 6 o'clock 12 o'clock. Narrator: but sovereignty is not just about politics, it is about money. For decades, French banks and financial systems have had an outsized influence on West Africa. Burkina Faso is part of the CFA franc zone, a currency arrangement deeply tied to the French treasury. This system meant that African economies had stability, but critics argued it locked them into dependency. French banks, directly or indirectly, managed large flows of capital. Loans, trade credits, and development funds were often channeled through French or Western institutions. Narrator: for a leader like Traoré copyright, who wanted to break free from France's grip, this was the real battlefield. If you control money, you control sovereignty. And if foreign banks can choke your economy, then your independence is just an illusion. Visuals: animated map showing CFA franc links to France, diagrams of banking flows. Part 3. The clash begins. 12 o'clock 2000 hours. The first sparks flew when international banking channels began tightening around Burkina Faso. Whether due to risk assessments, sanctions concerns, or deliberate restrictions, the flow of funds slowed. Businesses faced difficulties transferring money. Imports became harder. The Burkina Faso copyright economy felt the pinch. Narrator: French and Western banks thought they were applying pressure, but Traoré copyright decided to flip the script. His response had three key pillars. 1. Nationalizing narrative control, publicly accusing French institutions of economic sabotage. 2. Shifting toward gold and local resources, strengthening state control over gold mines, the country's most valuable asset. 3. Questioning external debt, hinting that Burkina Faso could walk away from certain obligations, presenting himself as a leader unafraid of defaulting if it meant independence. Visuals: gold miners at work, Traoré copyright pointing in a speech, French bank buildings. Narrator: in speeches, he said, "Why should our people starve while foreign banks dictate our fate? Why should our gold leave the country while our schools and hospitals crumble?" These were powerful words, and they struck a chord not only in Burkina Faso but across Africa. Part 4. The myth of the debt repayment, 2000 hours 28 hours 0 minutes. Narrator: then came one of the most viral claims, that Burkina Faso, under Traoré copyright, had paid off all its external debt and freed itself from French banks forever. This made headlines on social media. Supporters hailed him as a modern Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary who had once defied the IMF and World Bank. But when fact-checkers investigated, the truth was more complex. Reuters reported in March 2025 that these claims were false. Burkina Faso had not repaid all its external debt. The story had been exaggerated and spread by online influencers. Narrator: so was this a lie? Not exactly. It was a political narrative, one designed to send a message of defiance, even if the financial reality was more complicated. Visuals: social media posts with headlines, stamp fact check. False. Part 5, Gold as a Weapon, 28 hours 0 minutes 38 hours 0 minutes. If that repayment was more myth than fact, gold was very real. Burkina Faso is one of Africa's top gold producers. The copyright government took steps to assert greater control, increasing state oversight of mines, renegotiating contracts, and talking openly about using gold as the backbone of economic sovereignty. Narrator: instead of relying on French banks, the copyright wanted Burkina Faso to rely on Burkina Faso's own gold. It was both symbolic and practical. Gold is a universal asset. It cannot be devalued by sanctions the way currency can. Analysts said this was risky. Mining is complex, and corruption can easily creep in. But for Traoré, the copyright's supporters, it was proof he was willing to take on the colonial system head-on. Visuals: gleaming gold bars, miners digging, the copyright in military uniform inspecting mines. Part 6, International Reactions, 38 hours 0 minutes 50 hours 0 minutes. The copyright moves sent triples across the globe. France was already frustrated by his expulsion of French troops in 2023. Relations plunged further when Burkina Faso the copyright authorities detained French nationals. Eventually, Morocco mediated their release, showing just how strained diplomacy had become. Narrator: for France, the copyright had crossed the line. For Traoré the copyright, France was the symbol of everything he wanted to dismantle. The battle over banks was not just about money, it was about dignity, pride, and the future of Africa. Meanwhile, Russia and other non-Western partners offered support, seeing an opportunity to weaken French influence in the Sahel. African youth across the continent shared the copyright's speeches, hailing him as a hero of independence. Visuals: French and Burkina Faso the copyright flags torn apart, handshake with Russian officials, cheering African youth. Part 7, Reality on the Ground, 50 hours 0 minutes 105. But beyond the fiery speeches and viral headlines, the reality was mixed. Imports grew more expensive. Local businesses struggled with restricted financial flows. Ordinary citizens bore the brunt of economic disruptions. Narrator: the truth is, turning the tables on banks is not done in one night. It requires building alternative systems, attracting investment, ensuring transparency, and protecting citizens from inflation. Without that, defiance can turn into hardship. Visuals: crowded markets, rising food prices, long queues at banks. Experts noted that while Traoré the copyright had captured imaginations, his government still lacked a clear, sustainable economic strategy. Narrator: revolutionary words can inspire, but they must be backed by revolutionary institutions. Part 8, Did he really defeat the banks? 105A112. Narrator: so, did Ibrahim Traoré the copyright truly turn the tables on French banks? The honest answer: partially. He shifted the conversation. He challenged France's dominance. He used gold and political rhetoric as weapons. He inspired millions of Africans. But financially, Burkina Faso is still entangled in international systems. Debts remain. Trade relies on global banking channels. French influence is weakened but not erased. Narrator: the banks may not have fallen, but their aura of untouchable power has been cracked, and that crack may widen in the years to come. Part 9, The Future, 112A118. The road ahead is uncertain. Burkina Faso faces immense challenges: security threats, economic fragility, and diplomatic isolation. If Traoré tilde copyright succeeds in building regional alliances and alternative financial systems, he could indeed set a precedent for Africa. If not, his defiance may fade into another chapter of failed resistance. Narrator: But one thing is certain. The fight between Ibrahim Traoré tilde copyright and French banks has already changed the conversation. Across Africa, young people are asking, why must we depend on former colonial powers? Why can't we build our own financial independence? Visuals: African youth waving flags, slogans of independence, portraits of Sankara and Traoré tilde copyright side by side. Closing, 118A120. Narrator: Serious, inspiring tone. Ibrahim Traoré tilde copyright may not have defeated French banks outright, but he has challenged their dominance and forced the world to pay attention. Whether history remembers him as a liberator or a dreamer will depend on what comes next. Narrator: What do you think? Did Traoré tilde copyright really turn the tables, or is this battle far from over? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Call to action: if you found this video insightful, hit like, subscribe, and share, because the story of Africa's fight for financial independence is just beginning. Burkina Faso's young leader, Ibrahim Traoré tilde copyright, just pulled a move that shook the financial world. Did he really turn the tables on French banks? Middle, 0:10A145. Narrator: For decades, French banks and the CFA franc kept West Africa tied to Paris. But Traoré tilde copyright said, enough. He tightened control over gold, Burkina Faso's most precious resource, and accused French banks of strangling his nation's economy. His speeches went viral, echoing across Africa, calling for true independence. Then came the big claim: Burkina Faso had paid off all its debt. Social media exploded, but fact-checkers revealed the truth: the debt is not gone. The story was exaggerated, but the message was clear. Traoré tilde copyright was daring to challenge France's financial empire. Meanwhile, everyday people still face hardship. Prices rise, imports struggle, and the fight for stability continues. Yet, Traoré tilde copyright's defiance has inspired millions. Across Africa, young people now ask, why should our gold feed foreign banks while our schools starve?